Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel SQL Edge, your one-stop learning place for SQL Server and data engineering. In today's video, we are going to learn about a very important topic, SQL constraint. In this video, we will understand what are the constraints, why we use them, real-life examples of the constraint, and a live demo using a student's table in a SQL Server. So let's get started. Let's start with a very basic question. What are the constraints in SQL Server? Keep in mind, this is a very common interview question for the interviewers to ask during your interviews, like whether you are fresher or you are experienced. This question will be there in the interview for sure in every SQL interview question. What is mean by constraints in a SQL Server? So let's define it. Constraints are the rules that we apply to our database tables to maintain the accuracy and reliability of the data. What does it mean? So whenever we apply constraint on a table, we can ensure that table is having a valid data, accurate data, and a consistent data. Right? You can think of constraints like rules and boundaries in real life that help us to maintain the discipline. Right? So in a real life scenario, we can say like those are like rules or the boundaries that will help us to maintain the discipline in our life. For an example, let's consider a school we are having. In a school, we are having a muster. We call that as a muster, or we call that as a register for the students' information. So in that register, we have a student details, and every student will have the unique roll number, right? Why unique? So that uh, we cannot see any duplicate records, like same roll number cannot be given to the different students, right? So we can say like these are the two different roll numbers assigned to two different students, right? A student's name, right? Student's name cannot be blank. So this is also a one type of constraint, one type of rule we are having. Why student's name cannot be blank? Let's say we have the student ID or we have the roll number, but we don't have the student name against that roll number. So how we can identify like this roll number is belongs to which student? So it is kind challenging, quite difficult. It is an inaccurate data, right? Then we will have some checks before enrolling the students into our school. Like students' age should be more than 4 years if we are taking the admission to the primary or pre-primary schools, right? So we are having some check before enrolling the students. So check is again a kind of constraint in a real life scenario for enrolling the students, right? Let's say we are having the admissions and we have to maintain the date of admission. So right, so date of admission is something like on which date the student has been registered, right? So that can be dedicated to the that day's date, like today's date on the admission date. So this is again a default value we are providing, today's date. So these are the some real life examples we will be having, using which we can understand the constraints in the SQL Server. In simple words, we can say constraints are the rules that protect your data from invalid or the duplicate entries, right? Then why we need the constraint? The second question comes in mind, why we need this constraint on our SQL Server table, right? You might be wondering, why do you need even this constraint in a SQL Server database? Can't we just let users enter any data that they want, right? Can the students enter any data that they want in the register? No, that will be again a mismatched data, inaccurate data. Imagine you're running a college database where students are registered, right? What if someone enters the same students twice, thrice, or four times, right? Or enters a student without a name, or gives a negative age or zero as a age, right? That is not possible. That is not accurate data. A student cannot have the zero or the negative age, right? All these will make your data incorrect and unreliable, right? It is not a reliable data. That's where the constraints come into the pictures. They ensure that only valid data gets inserted into your table. All right, so the constraints means we are defining some rules that what kind of data can be inserted into the table or updated into the table. If the constraints are being violated, the SQL Server will not allow to insert or update or delete the data from the table, right? So there are several types of constraints we are having. Let's list them one by one. So here I have listed some of the constraints. We have the not null, right? What does it not null means? So not null will ensure that a column cannot have a null value, right? So whenever we create any table, the column can be either null or not null, right? So by default value will be null, and if we mention that column as a not null, we cannot have the null value inside a table. Okay, then second constraint is a unique constraint. Unique ensures that all the values in a column are different. Like as the name suggests, it will ensure the values inside a column are unique. It can have more than one unique key inside a one table, right? And it can accept one null value as well. Then next we are having primary key constraint. It is again a combination of not null and unique. So what is not null? It does not allow null value. What is unique? Every value should be a different or unique. So primary key is a combination of both. That means a combination of not null and unique is called as a primary key, right? It will uniquely identify each record and it will not accept a single null value as well. Next we have the check constraint. Check constraint will ensure the values meet the specific condition, right? So we can define a condition, and while inserting or updating the data, the insert statement or update statement, whatever value we'll be having, that should satisfy the given condition. Next we are having the default constraint. Default constraint is again used to provide a default value if none of the value is provided. And last one, we are having a foreign key. It will maintain the relationship between the two tables, right? So in this video we will focus on first five and understand them with practical example, right? Let's switch to the SQL Server Management Studio and see how these constraints works in a real time, right? So let's see. So these details I have mentioned here as well, whatever I was just mentioning, right? Why we need the constraint, what is mean by constraint, what are the different types of constraint we are having, that all details I have mentioned here. Now let's create one table called students. Before that, let's see if the table is already there in the database. The table is already there, so what I will do, I'll just drop the table first and recreate it once again. Okay, before talking about each of the constraint, we will talk about the table without any constraint. Okay, so this is the table. I'm going to create a normal syntax. Create table, table name, column name, data type of the column, right? That we are defining out here. I am not mentioning any other syntax right now. I'm going to create this table and we can see the table here. Now let's insert some sample data into this table, right? But before inserting the sample data, let's see the table structure once again in the in this object explorer, right? It is a students table and the column we are having here. If you see here, in front of all the columns we have the data type and there is one keyword called null. So whether you define or not define, the by default columns of any table will be the nullable column. What it means by null column, right? Let's try to insert the data. Insert one sample record, insert into students. Okay, and I'll give the column names here: student ID, roll number, then we have name, age. Okay, I will insert the values for only 4 columns as of now. I will insert the first record, student ID, as a 1, and I will insert just the name as a Rakesh. The name, okay, the second one is an roll number. So roll number I will give as a 101, Rakesh, and age as something like 18 years. Okay, so I will insert this one record here and let's see the data now. Keep in mind we have not provided the value for the column called city. Okay, so we have not provided the value for the column called city. Let's see the data now and we will see in city column the default value, the default or we can say by default it is having a null column. So we could see in city there is a null null value inside a city column we could see. Let's try to insert one more record with some same student, same roll number, and this is now something called Prakash. Okay, and his age is like minus 20 years. Okay, whether it is possible to have the age minus 20 in a real life? No, it is not possible. It is not a valid data, but you can see still it is allowing me to insert the data in negative numbers for the age. Okay, and same for the city column, you could see there is a null value. Okay, let's try to insert one more record. This time I'm changing the student ID to 2 and roll number to 102, and I'm giving some, I'm not providing the name value, and I'm just giving the age here. Okay, so I'm removing the name column and I'm giving the age as something like 0 years. Okay, let's insert this third record, and we would see third record is also got inserted, and let's see the data here. We could see there is no name and age is 0, city is null. So students cannot be of 0 years age, right? We cannot just admit the a small baby which just born, right? It is not possible. This is not a correct data, even though the student's name cannot be also null, right? We will not be able to identify this roll number or student ID belongs to whom, right? And here we could see the duplication, right? So two different students cannot have the same roll number and cannot have the same student ID, right? So if you don't have the insert, we will be able to insert any record into the table. Any kind of data can be inserted into the table, right? So constraint will restrict those kind of data from being inserted or updated, right? So let me drop this table once again and recreate the table with constraint. So here we'll be having the DDL with constraints. Okay, so this is how we can create the table with constraint. Okay, so what I was trying to have is I was trying to have all the 5 constraints apart from the foreign key like primary key, unique key, not null, check and default. I was trying to have all the constraint in a single table, right? How we can define the primary key in front of a data type. Okay, on any table, on any column, we can define the constraint. Okay, and the constraint can be defined after data type. So first column student ID integer, and I'm mentioning this as a primary key. So to mention the primary key, to create a constraint called primary key, we need to mention the key, primary key in front of column name. Then same for the unique key. So here for the unique key constraint, we don't need to mention key, just mention unique, then comma, third column name I am having, name I am saying like it cannot be blank or it cannot be null, right? So I'm specifically mentioning a not null constraint here, right? So this column will be not null. Then age I'm having the check constraint. I'm going to check age should be always greater than or equal to 18 years. So any value I'm trying to insert less than 18 years, it will fail. And city I'm defaulting to Pune, right? So even though the no value is passed, the city value being inserted as a Pune for all the students. If no value passed, if there is value passed, it will have the same value, right? What it is passed there. Execute this, the table is created, and we could see currently we don't have any data inside a table. And now let's try to insert some data here. Okay, so I'm having 5 records here, and each of the record I'm having unique student ID, unique roll number, and name also it is not having any blank value. Age is having more, greater than 18 years, and city I'm providing for some record I'm providing the values, and last record I have not providing any value. I'm just mentioning this as a default, right? So insert this record. 5 rows are being inserted without any issue because all the records, all the rows are giving you the correct values, accurate data only. Now let's try inserting some data violating constraint for our demo, right? So what are those constraints we'll be having? So first we will be trying to insert the duplicate record, right? So we know in our table we already have the student ID 1. Okay, and student ID is a primary key in our table. Primary key, what is the definition of primary key? it will uniquely identify each record in table. It will not allow the duplicate records to be inserted, right? So when I try to insert the student ID 1, it will throw an error saying the violation of primary key constraint. The error says violation of primary key constraint, PK students, and cannot insert duplicate key in the object DBO students, right? And duplicate value is 1. So it is saying like the student ID 1 is already existing in table. We cannot insert the same student ID, right? So primary key will help us to have only the unique record present into the table. Let's see one more constraint with some inaccurate data, not null constraint. What is the not null column we are having? We are having name as a not null column. So to insert the data into the table, we should always have the name value provided. Now in this case, I'm removing the name column and I'm not mentioning the value for that. Student ID I'm having 6, roll number I'm having 107, age I'm having 24, city I'm having Pune, right? So let's insert this. It will throw the error saying like cannot insert the null value into the column name. The table students column does not allow null value and insert fails. So what it is saying, the name column is not allowing the null value, but why it is trying to insert null? We are not passing the null value even, right? So by default, any time if you are trying to insert some record and you are not passing the value, SQL Server will try to insert the null value, right? But as the name column we have created as a not null column, it will fail the insert, right? Let's see one more example to check the to see the check constraint, right? So check constraint we have applied on age column, right? So age should be greater than or equal to 18. So let's try to insert the record with some age less than 18 years. So I'm trying to insert the age which is less than 18 years, and let's see what will happen. Again the insert statement conflicted with the check constraint. See, here is one constraint name it is giving. I will show you where is the constraint name coming from, and the conflict occurred in the database, student database, and the table is called student and column is age. So age is having the check constraint conflict, right? So this is way, this is how we can see like how the constraint are violating and how it is stop being inserted the wrong data, right? Let's check the default constraint as well, how it will work. Right now, as of now, we can see we are providing all the values. So now I will remove the city value here. I'm not providing city, I'm just providing student ID 8, okay, roll number as 109, name as like something any name we can give like Raj, and age is a let's say 21 years, right? I'm trying to pass the values for 4 columns. I'm not providing the value for city, even I'm not mentioned the column name as well. Let's try to insert. Whenever I'm inserting the record, you would see default value Pune is being inserted, right? Because we have defined the column or the table as city column will be defaulted to Pune. So this is how the default constraint will insert the default value defined during the table creation, right? Let's check for the check constraint as well. We have one more constraint called check, right? So check constraint we have applied on the, not check actually, it is a unique constraint we have applied on the roll number. So what is the unique constraint we'll be having? Unique will ensure all values in a column are unique, and it will allow the one null value. We have seen like the primary key will not allow any null value, but roll number, okay, if I'm not passing the roll number value and I'm just passing the value for 3 columns, okay, so the roll number will be inserted as a null, right? We could see. Now let's try to insert one more record with a roll number as a null value. What will happen with that? 10. I'm changing the name to something like Saili. Okay, and I'm giving some age as a 20. Now let's try to insert. Now this time, even though I'm not passing the value for roll number, the SQL Server will try to insert the null value, and we cannot insert the null value once again into the table students and column roll number, right? Because if the SQL Server will success to insert the data into the roll number column and value is null, okay, it will be again violation, because the unique key constraint can allow only a single null value. So if it is successfully inserting one more record, there will be two null value and it is a violation of the unique key constraint. So this is how the constraint will help us to have the correct data inside a table, right? So we have checked here, we created the table and we have understood like how primary key work, how not null constraint will work, how unique and check constraint will work, and how default will assign the default value for the a column whenever there is a no value has been passed. Whenever we pass the value, the same value will be inserted, but when we don't pass the value, the default value will be inserted into the table, right? So let's quickly recap what we have learned today. We have learned the constraint, right? And these are the six constraint we are having. From these six, we have learned five constraint. Not null constraint, which prevents the missing data. Unique will avoid the duplicate entries. Primary key allows us to uniquely identify each record. Check will validate the logical conditions like age or any dates condition. Default files a default value whenever a value is not submitted, right? This constraint ensure that your database always stores clean, accurate and reliable data, right? That's all for the today's session on SQL Server Constraint. I hope you found this video easy and useful for you, right? In tomorrow's session, we will see the foreign key constraint and we will understand how we can see the name of the constraint, how we can add the constraint on an existing table, how to drop the constraint, right? If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe to SQL Edge for more real-time SQL tutorials and interview focused sessions. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Thank you all.